Most of the people we interviewed spoke very positively about living in Cornwall as disabled people. They talked about community, belonging, and a sense of place. Positive things about living in Cornwall. What are your views about what's it like being in Cornwall for somebody with a learning difficulty?
It can be difficult, but things have changed. Because one of the issues, obviously, is the Safe Places scheme now. Because I'm also on the parish council, so this is unusual. But I think things have changed for people with learning disabilities, to be honest with you, quite a bit. Because at one time, they would all be shut away in institutions, and most of those are now closed.
You said that you're on the parish council. Do you want to say what your full title is?
I'm parish councillor for Barncoose Ward, but I'm also the parish tree warden.
So you were elected onto the council, weren't you?
I was elected onto the council initially in 2003, actually in a proper election.
When you say a proper election, you mean just a council parish election, wasn't it?
I'm in an election where I had to go to the poll, as opposed to what's happened in the last couple of times.
And so when you're elected onto the council, what do you have to do? What are your duties as a councillor?
Well, my duties is to represent the people who live in my ward on whatever issue that comes up, i.e. planning issue, for an example. Controversial planning applications, usually, do attract quite a few members of the public.
So do you get a lot of the general public knocking on your door and talking to you about their local
I do
problems?
get people sometimes, not necessarily knocking on my door, but definitely stopping me in the street on occasions. And I may occasionally get the odd phone call about something controversial. Or I may end up with a stack of letters if somebody tries to put 40 houses down West Colgus.
It's a very, very lovely county. The people are absolutely wonderful. I live in a village, Grandpound now, and the people there are just so helpful, and they treat me like a human being as well. You know, they put a crossing in for me. Well, they've made sure they have a crossing in there, and they're very, very supportive. They'll always cross me over the road if it gets stuck, and they include me in everything. You know, if there's something on at the village hall, you know, somebody said, "Do you want to go down?" I'm going down, come down with me. And they are absolutely fabulous.
The public transport where I am is quite good, actually. In the Campbell and Redruth Hale area, the transport's quite good.
And that's buses?
Yeah.
Lovely little town. And in itself, I only realised it this year, it's very inclusive to a point. First time we went to look at houses, we parked in the main street, got out of the car, and people started talking to us. And that was quite unusual for Cornwall in my experience. So, oh, this is all right. But I think what it is, because there's this big training base for the Navy, HMS Raleigh is there, and so there's a lot of people coming in and out the whole time. And I think the whole point people tend to be more used to incomers and more used to being inclusive. So that was lovely. But also, I couldn't have come back if Weybridge hadn't changed, and it had. I think a lot of it was to do with the Eden project and the fact that from that time on, a lot of people started moving in, it seemed to me, who were a bit from other parts of Britain, who were more used to difference where they come from. So all of a sudden, I didn't walk down the street in Weybridge feeling like an alien.
But that's interesting because, you know, in my mind and many people's mind, Cornwall's a bit of a tourist destination, so we're kind of used to having lots of people coming here for bits of the year and then disappearing again.
But tourists are seen as a necessary evil, aren't they?
That kind of idea about people coming and going there and difference, because we're used to difference in that kind of way, maybe.
We are, but it's only temporary. You haven't got to get to know them because they're only tourists. So you can tolerate that, but it's not the same as you might have to see this person every day in your life walking down the street, you know. But that was the difference, was when people stopped crossing the road to avoid me, I knew I could come back, it was safe.
When did that happen then?
It was literally within a couple of years, and it was around the Eden Project time. You know, that concept of the arts and the sciences and everything having its own place, and mixing and matching and inclusion. I don't think they thought of it in terms of disabled people, you know, like that wasn't top of their agenda, but in terms of thinking more inclusively about life. I think that did have a big impact, actually. And all of a sudden it didn't really matter, actually, if local people were still not liking me because they were new people who didn't mind talking to me. And oddly enough, I found that the more that happened, the more the locals suddenly thought, oh, actually, she isn't quite as scary. And a lot of them seem to come to the conclusion that I've been a teacher, which I sort of was at uni, but not. I wouldn't call myself a teacher, and you know, so that made me respectable.
You could do the cliff walks and things like this, and it's lovely. So I like sailing, so I've got my own yacht down at Mevagissey. I would hate to have to go back and live in a town or somewhere now.
Because there's a group, isn't there, in Cornwall, specifically for people with visual impairment and sailing?
Yes, I started that years ago. In fact, that was another one of the things that Gloria helped me do from the Cornwall Blind Association. It's called BATS, would you believe, Blind at Sea. And yeah, they've got a couple of yachts down at Mila there now, so, and they take visually impaired people sailing because it's a wonderful experience. On a yacht, you can do all sorts of things. You can teach people how to helm. You can take some time and talk to them if they need to talk on their own. You can teach them to cook, all these sort of things. And you know, once they've achieved things like that, they start to think, well, perhaps I'm not so daft. You know, I can do this. And I know a chap in Helston it was. He came out with us, and he was a natural helmsman on the yacht. And he loved it. He absolutely loved it. And yet he couldn't cross his own front room. You know, when I first met him, he said, oh no, I'll sit in the chair all day long until the sun comes round. And when he died, his son wrote to us and said, you know, that was the making of my father. He loved that sailing. So, you know, again, it's going in and doing something, then coming out and feeling that you've achieved something because the person's a lot better off.
So you say you set that up. When was that then set up?
21 years ago, I think it was, yeah. 22 now, I suppose, yeah.
1990s, 91, 92.
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago.
And it's still going, isn't it?
It's still going, yeah,
strong
that's right.
organisation.
Yeah. I'm not sure, we set up tandem hire thing for the Cornwall Blind Association as well, but I think that's on its last legs, but I mean, it only takes a bit of funding to get in and do that sort of thing again.
And so you talked a bit earlier about village life and how kind of welcoming the local population is.
Yeah.
Do you notice that across Cornwall? So when you go to the major towns like Truro or Redruth or wherever it might be?
Yeah, absolutely everywhere. I know that as a visually impaired person, we're not threatening particularly, which is a big issue. I know when I was working, you know, you'd often go and see people who were down on the file as being aggressive or whatever. And you go and knock on the door and they would say, oh, they'd open the door and shout at you and then realise you couldn't see. And then they would say, oh, sorry, mate, come on in. And immediately, because you weren't a threat to them, you could communicate. So being visually impaired has its advantages. But but people right across the board, Camborne, Redruth, Penzance, Bude, whatever, they're all very different, but they're always very accommodating, always willing to help you out, take you somewhere, get you involved in something. It's really good.
My memories of shopping with my mother was being wheeled around Chislehurst and her having to leave me outside the shop because it got big steps to get in. That was frustrating, particularly as I can remember some people avoiding passing one. In other words, they'd see you in the wheelchair and decide to cross the road earlier and then go along and then cross back again. And I don't remember seeing anybody in Cornwall doing that. On the whole, Cornwall has scored quite well from my point of view, although I've done a bit of work over the years trying to help access. I was a member of PANIC, which was the access group called Proper Access, now in Cornwall. I've had a small hand in trying to make it a little bit more accessible than it was before.
When was PANIC set up? Do you remember?
You know, I can't remember it. It all merges in my mind. I enjoyed doing that. And it was a shame when it had to pack up.
You used to do access audits and...
Yes, trying to advise people on how they could improve their premises, make it more accessible.
The relaxed atmosphere, I go up to London 3 or 4 times a year, up to the Scope head offices on Market Road, and go to their meetings up there. And I'm always pleased to get back to Cornwall because there is a rushed atmosphere up there and everybody's rushing to get to the tube or the train station or whatever they do up there. I think everything's rushed, and in turn that makes me feel I've got to rush as well. And I like a relaxed life.
It's the people. There is something unique about the people in Cornwall. I guess people in community, how individuals make up strong communities where there is a sense, and I find it, you can walk down the street and have 3 conversations with 3 different people. And I don't think you always get that in other towns, cities and counties. So, yeah, people and community, I would say.
Participants: Councillor Chris Jordan, Richard Pryor, Dr Claire Dragaskis, Diana Johnson, Pete Ski and Reverend Don Whitting. Interviewer: Dr Theo Blackmore. Transcriber: JHTS Transcription Services. Subtitles: Azook Community Interest Company, Disability Cornwall and Isles of Scilly, Empower, Assist, Facilitate. Supported by the National Lottery through the Heritage Lottery Fund. All interviews recorded in 2013. For more information about the project, please email theo@disabilitycornwall.org.uk.